So, question is it curtains for the Democrats? Let's talk. Here to debate is Center of American Progress Associate Director for Tax and Budget Policy, our friend Michael Linden, and Dan Mitchell, Senior Fellow at the Cato Institute. Michael Linden, no money from Wall Street. Jamie Dimon, there's a lot of buyer's remorse on Wall Street. They're the big fat cats. Business Roundtable is in full revolt against President Obama. A lot of those guys were for him in the very beginning. So am I right in assuming, and that you will agree, that this is the end of the Democratic majority?
I wouldn't really want to take Jamie Dimon's money anyway right now, so I'm not too concerned about those numbers.
Really? You wouldn't want to take? What are you gonna do? Use wampum in the election? I mean, the biggest donors are walking away. The biggest companies are walking away. The Tea Party is walking away. The Business Roundtable is. You got guys like Jeff Immelt blasting him. He was basically for about. I mean, how can you say you don't want to take their money? You're losing the race for money, and you've already lost the race for message, haven't you, Michael?
Yeah, like I said, I just don't think that it's a political problem for the Democrats not to be getting big bucks from Wall Street right now. I just don't think that's a political problem. But I'm not a political strategist, so you shouldn't ask me.
All right, fair enough. Dan Mitchell, I want to bring you in because what interests me, too, before we get to cutting corporate taxes, the Business Roundtable revolt comes on top of the buyer's remorse from all these Wall Street Democrats who aren't giving anymore. Dan, is this election going to be a big cultural clash between free market, private business, and entrepreneurship on the one side, and between statism and big government regulating and taxing on the other? Is this how this election is shaping up?
Well, I certainly suspect there are some voters who see this as sort of their last stand to try to fight against the statist agenda of Obama, which is really just a continuation of Bush's statist agenda. But I wouldn't look at big business as some bellwether. Big business was siding with the Democrats in 2008 because they thought the Democrats would win. Now big business is shying away from the Democrats because they see a debacle for the Democrats at the polls in November. But the big business community are mostly just political animals who want to go with the winners. It's what's happening at the grassroots level. It's the entrepreneurs that matter the most. They're the ones that are sour on the Obama agenda. Big business cuts deals with who's ever in power, so don't pay attention to them.
All right, so would you say, therefore, go back to the entrepreneurs at the grassroots level? Is that where the culture clash is? Is that where the political clash is between entrepreneurship on the one side and statism on the other?
I think that's a much better way of looking at it because the entrepreneur, the small business owner, the individual investor, they're the ones who don't get special deals in financial regulation bills that Goldman Sachs supports. They're the ones that don't cut special deals in climate change legislation like the legislation that British Petroleum supports. They're the ones that don't get the insider money and the insider track for handouts from so-called stimulus bills. So it's really the entrepreneurs and the grassroots versus big business and big government.
All right, so Michael, let me ask you this, though.
Sure.
Everyone, big and large business, and a considerable body of experts are clamoring for lower corporate and business tax rates, maybe faster tax write-offs for investment. This is a tried and true job creator. The government stimulus has clearly failed. Michael, why is the Democratic Party opposed to business tax cuts?
Okay, well, first, I just want to, I'll throw it out there. I know you'll disagree with, but the stimulus has not failed. But let me just move past that and say that I think corporate tax reform is a good idea. Lowering the rate, getting rid of a lot of the loopholes that are in the system, a lot of the special deductions and credits. I think that's a good idea, and I think there's a pretty good basic proposal out there by Senators Wyden and Gregg that's a pretty good starting point, but has been completely ignored by conservatives in the Senate. They don't want to do bipartisan bills in the Senate right now. Republicans don't want to work with Democrats on anything because they want to win in November, I guess.
Well, you know, Dan Mitchell, we've had Wyden and Gregg on. I agree with Michael 100% on this. I think it's a good bill. But, Dan, I guess the question is, President Obama, Majority Leader Reid, Speaker Pelosi, they seem absolutely intent on preventing any of these tax reforms, on preventing lower business tax rates, on preventing any faster investment write-offs. You know, on the investment write-offs, what we call depreciation, you don't get the write-off unless you make the investment, but it's precisely the investment that creates the job, Dan. Now, is that part of this culture clash between free enterprise and statism, and is that why the White House and the leadership won't do this?
Well, I suspect that the average person has no idea what depreciation is. You're right, it's just business investment. Why are we taxing business investment?
Right.
To me, the things that really symbolize what's going on is the fact that the congressional Democrats and Obama want higher double taxation on dividends next January. They want higher double taxation on capital gains next January. They want the individual top income tax rate to go up, which, of course, is a tax on small business, entrepreneurs, and investors. This is the signal to people out there in the real economy that if you produce, if you create wealth, if you do what's right for America, government's going to hit you upside the head with a 2x4.
Michael, do you disagree with that?
I do. The real economy that Dan's talking about is 10% unemployment. That's the real economy. And blocking unemployment benefits at this kind of level is unheard of. It's absolutely ahistorical. It's never happened before. And going back to tax rates that we had under Bill Clinton, which was not exactly a dark economic period, is not an unreasonable thing to do. In fact, it's a very responsible thing to do for anybody who actually cares about responsible budgeting.
But Mike, let me just ask you this.
Yeah.
I know Dan's going to come back, but on the unemployment benefits, okay,
sure.
we could have an academic debate about whether they stopped working or not. But
yeah, because all the academia is on one side, but okay.
All right, look, the simple answer, my question to you is, why doesn't the Democratic Congress join with the Republicans and pay for the unemployment compensation? That's all I ask. It's about $30 billion. It's a big piece. The country is sick and tired of big spending and deficits. You know that. I know that. Dan knows that. Michael, why don't they just pay for it? They'd help out the unemployed, whether I like that or not. They'd help out the unemployed. Meanwhile, they wouldn't set us back anymore on the budget.
Okay,
why not just pay for it? That's the missing link.
Right. When you say pay for it, you have to mean either cutting some spending someplace else or raising some taxes somewhere.
That's correct. Making choices. Make a choice for a change.
The Democrats have proposed repeatedly closing the carried interest loophole, which would pay for a big chunk of that, which is just a loophole for a very specific set of Wall Street hedge fund managers, and they won't do it. The Republicans won't let them do it. So they've tried to pay for it, but the Republicans won't let them.
All right, Dan, respond to that. Mike says it's the carried interest. In other words, taxing investment partnerships is the best way to pay for unemployment benefits. That seems like taxing those who produce in order to pay those who don't produce, but what do I know? What's your take, Dan?
Well, let's just translate it into plain English. What he's really talking about is a higher tax rate on capital gains, which is, again, part of the anti-entrepreneurship mentality in Congress. And let me say something.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's not a higher tax rate on capital gains. It's taxing ordinary income. It's taxing ordinary income as ordinary income. That's what carried interest is. It's ordinary income that's treated as capital gains.
If you don't understand how it works, I'm not sure what we can say.
I understand it perfectly well.
But let's shift to unemployment benefits.
Okay.
Why on earth would we want to subsidize unemployment? Paul Krugman, Larry Summers, these people, when they're writing in the academic world, and they can be honest, they admit that extending unemployment benefits has a negative effect on employment because people then hold out for a higher wage or wait until their benefits run out. Republicans actually did Obama a big favor by blocking this unpaid-for extension of unemployment benefits because it's more likely now that the unemployment rate will come down.
Well, we're just going to have to disagree about that. I just don't think that people are out there just waiting for their unemployment check. People are trying to get jobs, and they're working really hard at it, and they need a little bit of help to put food on the table, and I don't think that's too much to ask.
Why is unemployment so high? This gets back to your comment about the so-called stimulus. We spent money hand over fist. It didn't work for Hoover and Roosevelt in the 30s, didn't work for Japan in the 90s. Now Bush tried it in 2008. Obama tried it in 2009. Making government bigger, where?
All right,
Where is that a recipe for growth?
Michael, I'll give you the last word, my friend.
We've had this debate about the stimulus, and all I can say is that every expert is on my side. The CBO, macroeconomic advisors, Moody's, everybody agrees with me.
They're all Keynesians, and they're all wrong.
Dan, they all agree with me that the stimulus is working.
And
it wasn't
I'm glad they agree with you. I wouldn't want to be on their side.
We got to let this go. First of all, Michael Linden, you're terrific. Thank you. And so are you, Dan Mitchell.